It begins with absence and desire. It begins with blood and fear. It begins with the discovery of witches.
Ooh. I mean, there you go. That buried the lead.
Yeah.
There it is.
Just kind of threw that out there.
Wrapping up the season of the witch with a discovery of witches.
Which I feel like is this most appropriate book to end this with.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And today we're drinking the Blood Rage Martini. So this is actually a martini that I made for a Halloween party that I had bartended years ago. Very classic, like Halloween cocktail. So you're taking blood orange juice, vodka, Cointreau, and orange juice, shaken straight into a martini glass. It's got this like really, so if you get really good blood orange juice, it's like a deep, deep red, almost looks like blood.
Yeah.
And it tastes really good. So you shake and strain into a martini glass, and then you garnish with a dehydrated blood orange, and it just looks so spooky and fun. And if you want to go above and beyond, they do make this like drippy food coloring that looks like blood that you can put on the outside of the martini glasses.
Ooh.
Super fun, but kind of just fits for this because once again, witches and vampires, baby.
Why do so many dogs die before their time? Actress and dog activist Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation, says she's seeing more issues with dogs' joints, odors, and health than ever before. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to support any dog's health: their food. So she decided to create something she could actually feel good about feeding her dogs. Superfood Complete by Badlands Ranch is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients on the planet, including premium protein-packed beef, nutrient-dense organ meat, heart-healthy salmon, gut-healthy vegetables, and several superfoods vital to your dog's health. And because high-heat cooking can add unhealthy things to your dog's food, Superfood Complete uses air drying, so it gets cooked low and slow. This means it has the convenience of kibble, but the health benefits of whole foods. If you want your dog to experience all these incredible benefits, go to badlandsranch.com/save50 right now to get up to 50% off your order and a 90-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's BADLANDS ranch.com/save50 today. All dogs are unique. Your dog's results can and will vary.
Okay. I had never watched the show before this.
Yeah.
You had?
Yes.
Okay. But not read the book?
I had not read the book.
Okay.
Which is ironic because I had the book. I just hadn't read it. And it had been sitting on my shelf in the, to be read category. And I started watching the show without realizing it was the same as the book that was sitting on my shelf, and immediately was hooked. But it was on the streaming platform that I didn't have. So when I watched it, it was like, I think I was at my sister's house. I was somewhere else where we were watching it. And then I got back home and I was like, shoot, well, now I have to pay. It's like Stars had it.
Yeah, and now it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
So if you had just waited,
you
would have been fine to stream it.
And so I started paying for Stars just so I could watch it because I do
that for Outlander.
Immediately was hooked for like the first 2 episodes. I was like, ooh, what is this? And I want to watch it.
So first let's step back. This is Discovery of Witches, written by Deborah Harkness.
Mm-hmm.
First published in 2011, right? The way that they marketed this book, and the only reason I had heard of it is Harry Potter or Twilight for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Which is not accurate in any universe.
No, because, for multiple reasons. But it's also a trilogy.
Yeah, it's the All Saints trilogy. We're only talking about the first book and only talking about the first season of the show, right?
Yes.
Great, because I didn't read any of the others.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when I was doing a little bit of research for our episode today, I read some opinion pieces on the show. And what I found really interesting is, for starters, we're going to be talking about the book and the show pretty side by side because it is what it is. But what I found interesting was the fact that a lot of people who read the book series and then started watching the show said that the first season of the show, there are so many Easter eggs for the coming books. So the first book covers very little of what is going on in this world, whereas the show gives you a lot more, which I
So
found.
have you watched all 3 seasons?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I've only watched the first season,
Same.
which is, I feel like, okay for the fact that we're doing the first book. But then when I read that, I was like, oh, wait.
I want to read the rest of them.
Yes.
Like sometimes we do books where it's like the first in a series and I'm like, I don't really think I have to continue with this. This one, I'm excited to read the second because the way that they end this one makes you excited for how the story continues. But just to kind of backtrack here. So the whole idea about this is Diana is a witch who chooses not to use her powers,
Mm-hmm.
works as a historian. She's in Oxford.
Yeah.
She's goes to a special library that
Yeah.
they call up old manuscripts. She writes what they're about. Like, I don't know what she does. She does
Bohemian Library.
Yeah,
is
she
what they
does.
call it.
some sort of thing that she does. She
Yeah.
writes about the books. And then she randomly decides to pull up this book, this transcript called Ashmole 784,
Mm-hmm.
which she doesn't know why. It's just on her list. She has to do it. So she's just checking things off a list.
Yeah.
Pulls it up. In the book, very different than the show.
Mm-hmm.
In the show, the clasp like burns her hand and the words come on her hands and she's like, oh my God. And
It's a whole thing.
the electricity goes off. Where in the show, she's kind of like, oh, this book feels weird. It feels
And
like I'm feeling weird.
And the smell.
And it smells and like it's very sensory, but it's just happening to her.
Yeah.
Where in the show, it's like everybody in this library who consists of vampires, demons, and witches, as well as humans,
Yep.
are aware that she has pulled this up, and now they all want it because apparently it tells the origin of life for all of the creatures.
But also in the book, it's about the Philosopher's Stone.
Which I love. There's
Harry
your callback to Harry Potter.
Shout out.
Nicholas Flamel currently had it. That's all she needs to know. But super interesting how they kind of, and I was a little bummed when I watched the first episode because
Mhm.
my plan was I'm going to read the whole book, then watch a show because I didn't want to ruin one or the other.
Fair.
Which I'm glad they did because they brought in characters from the end of the book that don't even exist to you
Mm-hmm.
in the first episode.
Yep.
So I'm glad I did that.
Mhm.
But Diana meets Matthew, this vampire who's also a doctor who's studying the DNA of all of these creatures,
Mhm.
which again is different from book to the show
Yeah.
about what he's studying specifically. But
1,500-year-old vampire.
1,500-year-old vampire who has the same issues with control that Edward had. So there's your callback to Twilight.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets a lot of hate in the book because of that, because he is very controlling and very
much so.
Like, I am the man, thus I know what is best, and you will listen to me. And a lot of people say that that's one of the reasons why they enjoyed the show over the reading the book, because Matthew in the show is not. They kind of steered away from him
Sure.
being that very
But
intense.
we aren't going to go extinct tomorrow. There are still plenty of creatures in the world.
I have a different sense of time to you. When humans talk about climate change, that's exactly the argument they use. Oh, the polar ice caps will take so many years to melt. Who cares? I remember when the Thames iced over every winter. I used to skate on it. You're right, though. It's not going to happen immediately tomorrow, but it's already begun. One day, there'll be just one species. Humans.
And also in the book, Matthew is kind of violent, more so than he is in the show.
Yeah, so he's this French vampire, Matthew Clermont, who, he's kind of pretty tough past. I mean, he's killed.
He's been through a lot.
He's been through a lot. His wife and son die of disease
Mhm.
before he's turned, and it's an attempted, perhaps, he was trying to kill himself because of the heartbreak,
Mhm.
and where his quote-unquote vampire mother,
Mhm.
Isabel, which, by the way, when I'm reading it, I'm like, how the hell are you pronouncing Wisabo?
I know.
It wasn't until I listened to the audiobook and I was like, oh, they're pronouncing it Isabel.
Yeah.
almost like an Isabel kind of.
Also, a little interesting is she's supposed to be younger than he
him.
is.
And in the show,
she's definitely not.
She's not young.
No.
When she came on the screen, I go, well, that's not the same.
That's an interesting casting choice.
That's not the same.
Okay.
But she turns him, and the way that they do it is if you turn someone, they're essentially your child. Like, you know, and he has a son named Marcus, who's also a scientist underneath him that he turned.
Which, shout out My Lady Jane.
Yes, he's our boy. It's Gifford.
Yeah.
There are a couple things, though, that we talked about off camera, so I do just want to bring this up. In the book, it is a very will they, won't they. It is a very, the lion falls in love with the lamb. It's a
hopeless romantic.
And the buildup is so good.
It is really good. Okay. But did you feel like it was better in the book than in the show?
In the show, it doesn't happen.
Exactly. Okay.
They're like, hi, I'm a witch. I'm a vampire. Great. Let's be in love.
I love you. You love me. Say it.
Are you kidding me?
Say it.
You have to wait until you're like 3/4 of the way done with the book before he's like, I love you too, which essentially in vampire world for them means we're mated, you're my wife.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I was kind of bummed about is the fact that in the show, it's so quick. And in the book, it is so, there's lots of moments of like the closeness.
Yes.
So bringing back to Bridgerton days, that like the looks, the touch,
small touches.
It's the small things that build up of like anticipation of something happening, of a kiss, of whatever. And you don't get that in the show. And I also I liked the fact that in the book, Matthew is the one that kisses her first. In the show, that's not what happens. And I feel like it hits differently.
I think you don't get how important their relationship is and how much love they have for one another that they are willing to risk.
Yeah.
Like literally being offed by their own people because they're crossing streams between different creatures.
So, and that's a perfect way to kind of bring it to another, I would say, pretty big plot difference is in the show, the congregation is a huge part of what's going on. Whereas in the book, that is not the case.
Not in this first book. Perhaps it is in the second and third.
Fair. But I think what's interesting about that is, and again, we kind of talked about this a little bit off screen, but I think there's like a need to have a specific bad guy or someone that you're not rooting for. And I think in this case, to tell the story, they needed something to be like the enemy, and the congregation is that.
And yes, you're 100% correct. There's also so much you miss between the fact that he's 1,500 years old, and Deborah Harkness she's a historian herself. So she knows her shit. When she was writing this, all the callbacks to history, and she's asking him, wait, did you know Charles Darwin? Did you know Abraham Lincoln? And he's like, oh, no, I knew George Washington better. Like, Jefferson was all words, but I was friends with George Washington because he was a soldier. Like, she knows her stuff. So when he's calling back to wars he's fought in, how he's, the Knights of the Templar, all these things, you can tell this book was written by a historian.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work. I wish that they brought more of that to the screen because that is what I think makes this book so special.
Yeah.
It's not just a Twilight. It's not just a vampire story.
No, and I that's a great point too, because I think like her whole life has been pushing magic aside. She doesn't want to rely on magic. She doesn't want magic in her life because magic just causes hurt for her because her parents were killed and they did magic. And I think her association with magic has not been good. And so she doesn't want really anything to do with magic. And she wants to prove that like it's not just magic in the world. Like there are actual reasons for things happening and stuff going on.
Science is very important to her in history.
Exactly. Yeah. And you get like there is a line, I think it's in both the book and the movie, where Matthew is kind of like, he's talking to his demon friend about,
Haymitch.
Wanting.
His name?
Yeah.
No. Is it? What is it?
Or
it's not Haymitch.
Hyman?
No, it's not Hyman. Oh my God. Please, Katie, whatever you do, leave that in there. It's definitely not Hyman. Oh, man.
That's not important. They're talking about like Diana, and he kind of like chalks it off to the fact that she's a historian, and so he's just her next project. Like she just wants to know all this stuff about him because it's like meeting someone that can tell her all about the things that she's been studying for years.
And he also, like, he's not, I don't know how to describe this. He's pretty overwhelmingly protective, but he's also, in the book, while he is more violent, you kind of learn why he's protective. And then, like, her parents are killed, like we just talked about. They were murdered. We think by humans until she learns they were murdered by their own kind. They were murdered by witches.
Yeah. Which her like witchy friend, Jillian, tells her, but out of kind of like anger and like, so she doesn't know if she should believe her.
And she also, just pulling up the exact scene here, she in the show is like this very likable, nerdy girl who's also a witch who's like, oh, I don't want to hurt her. You know, I want to be there for her. Where in the book, she's a bitch. Yeah. She is like, no.
Yeah.
You're not one of us. You're not in the coven. You do not practice with all of us. So screw you.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of your dead parents. I'm going to mail it to you. And so what does Matthew do? He avenges what happened to her from her having to see those photographs and kills Jillian.
Yeah. In the book.
In the book. And in the show, you see him kill her, but there's no like build up to why he's doing it really.
He drains her blood to the like last moment where she's still holding on because she like crawls her way to the other witches.
Congregation witches house.
And then she dies later in the hospital. But like ultimately he killed her.
Yeah. And she doesn't blink. She's like, oh, really wish you wouldn't have killed her. And I'm like, all right, this is Twilight vibes for sure.
Yeah.
But then she starts to lean into her witchcraft because she starts to realize that she has all these powers. And she grew up with her Aunt Sarah, also a witch, and her partner, who's also a witch. Probably my favorite part of all of this is their haunted house.
Yeah.
The witches, the Aunt Sarah, they end up going at the very end, spoiler alert, they go to the aunt's house. But the house is haunted and has a mind of its own. And there's all these, like, when people are showing up, the house builds another room.
Yeah.
When they need more blankets, the house produces them or washes them. And that is what I wish the Practical Magic house had done.
I know.
I wish that they rewrote the Practical Magic house with that.
It's kind of like the Weasley's house.
It is like the Weasley's house. That's such a good point. Oh, Molly would be so proud.
She really would be.
So I love that aspect of it, but we're kind of jumping all over the place where the plot is because we're excited to talk about the differences. But it's a really good story. It is.
It is. And I think, like, ultimately the plot is that this girl, Diana, she is trying to figure out, there's, like, multiple things that she's trying to figure out. But one of them is kind of, like, what happened to her parents. And as far as she knows, like we said before, that they were murdered. And then she's being told that they were murdered by witches. And then as the story continues, obviously all these other people are being introduced to her. And they're all everyone kind of has an opinion on like what's going on. And she kind of, which I really appreciate, she very much is like, I'm going to decide for myself what I'm going to like believe or not believe or like have feelings on, because like at the end of the day, like her aunts are very much like, don't trust vampires, don't trust demons, don't do this, don't do that. And then like Matthew is also a little bit like, oh, you shouldn't trust this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't be there, you shouldn't go out, and all this stuff. And then her friend was also kind of doing that. And then you've got Knox, who's like just this crazy warlock guy. And
he's the worst.
But she's like,
sucks.
And I also like Matthew brings this up throughout, is like how incredibly brave she is. Because like when you think about what's going on and the fact that she's literally being surrounded by all these creatures because she had the ability to call forth this book that she wants to use for her research, but doesn't know that it has all of this information that all these different people want. That's a lot.
And finding out that you don't come from a line of witches. You come from the most powerful line of witches that's ever been created. And you have been spellbound by your parents so that your magic would present when you met your dark prince. So the mom foreshadowed the fact that she was going to find Matthew.
Yeah.
Knew that her daughter was going to end up with a vampire. And when she finally found the vampire and fell in love, then her magic would unleash itself.
Yep.
So you get this witch wind, which is like this beautiful moment in the book between her and Matthew.
Yeah.
Not as cool in the show. She's in the library and just like laying on the ground.
She's laying on the ground and like holding on, and Matthew comes and he's like, just breathe. And she's like, Matthew. And then it just ends. And you're like, oh, okay.
It's so freaking
What
weird.
was that?
Then you have her witch water, which in the book is such a cool moment. Matthew has gone back to Oxford because someone broke into his lab to try and get what he's been studying.
Mm-hmm.
And she's alone with his mother, who hates witches because the witches killed her husband, Matthew's father, and their housekeeper, who's also a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And she can't control her emotions, and her tears turn into witch water, where there's this water just like flying out of her in all these directions. Where in the show, it just rains real hard.
I don't know, but I kind of loved that moment.
I
think because it was a moment, so if you hadn't read the book, it's like a perfect way. All this stuff is happening to her. All of her magic coming out in the show is much grander. I think in like less believable maybe, whereas in the book it feels much more like actual magic.
Yeah, like I wanted to see water, like they describe it as like flying out of her fingers and her eyes and her toes. And I'm like, I want to see this.
The rain,
but I get that. If I had not read the book, that would have been very cool and romantic.
Yeah, and I think like the whole concept of Matthew driving off after they get into the fight about like she's telling him that she loves him, and he's kind of like he doesn't say anything, and then he goes off to find out what's happening, and the rain starts, and both the mom and the housekeeper are kind of like, oh my gosh, like we haven't seen witch rain in
bajillion years, and witch wind in a quadrillion years.
Also, can we come up with better names than like witch rain and
come on, they're not even trying.
It felt a little like, okay. Oh,
so,
right.
Is it mean if we talk about the people that they cast?
No, because I think that's a big point of
contention.
Don't forget, you can catch up on past episodes of Watch It or Read It right now. Check out seasons 1 and 2, where we cover some of our favorite books turned screen adaptations, including Pride and Prejudice, My Lady Jane, Gone Girl, and lots more. Watch It or Read It, seasons 1 and 2, available now wherever you get your podcasts. I think especially had I not watched the show before I read the book, I think I would have had a much harder time. To be fair, they don't really describe the characters a ton in the book. Like, description is not one of their strong suits. They describe the magic stuff really well. Like, I love the way they describe that.
Maybe that was intentional. Maybe they were like, hey, listen.
Exactly.
We want you to make these characters who you want them to be.
Yep.
But, okay. I don't want to be mean.
I wouldn't have cast the guy who plays Matthew.
Really? Okay, I felt like that in the beginning. He grew on me.
It's the eyes.
For me, it is... Okay. Shh. Let me get names here because I feel bad just calling people out.
Not saying their names.
The guy who plays Matthew...
Mm-hmm.
Do you have it in your notes?
I don't.
Okay, let me find it because it's not that he's bad. I mean,
no.
He looks... Listen, this came out in 2011. This was very toxic masculinity time. You've got Bella, and Edward. You've got 50 Shades of Grey was super popular at the time. It's like alpha male, alpha male, alpha male.
Yeah.
So I envisioned him bigger, more muscular, because she says he's a warrior and he has the body of a warrior and he looks like a warrior.
Yes, I was just going to say, then that's really interesting because he's probably the only one that gets described because she talks about how big he is multiple times.
Yes, and he just looks like a scientist.
Yeah.
In the show.
Like a nerdy
hot scientist.
I mean, he's a little nerdy.
But played by Matthew Good. And then Diana Bishop. Beautiful girl. Played by Teresa Palmer. Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have a personality to save her life in this show. Why?
I don't.
And she looks great. Like the way that
Yeah.
they have her hair styled, especially, she describes herself in the book as like always wearing like a blouse and trousers.
Yeah.
A sweater and trousers. Like
Yeah.
she's super, like does not care how she looks,
No.
but naturally very pretty. But she describes herself as mousy. Remember when they're going to his home in France where he takes her to keep her safe?
Mhm.
He says, he's like, all right, pack. And she's like all freaking out because all she has is
Like dark sweaters.
dark sweaters and sweatpants and turtlenecks. And she wants to look fancy for his very rich French dead mom. And she's like, I know that I'm just too plain for her. And like, I can see why this girl is so naturally beautiful.
Yeah.
They really like the flyaway is in her braid. And
Yeah.
she looks like a beautiful historian who's been studying in a library all day.
Mm-hmm.
But they just, it's not, I don't think it's her, the actress, because I've seen her in other things, but
yeah.
there's
nothing.
nothing, no range.
You know what's interesting is I wonder, like, is it intentional because she's trying to hold back?
But she's not like that in the book at all. She's witty, she's funny, she like pushes back to Matthew.
Yeah.
When he's like, like how many times does he call her brave in the book? Because she's
Yeah.
so, she does not let people piss her off. She has moments kind of when she's dealing with Knox and like they're in the professor's house. She has moments where she shows a little personality.
Yeah.
But like they didn't, like she's just like a wet noodle.
Yeah, I think the one scene that I'm just envisioning is when she's like running away from having like after the whole like book thing where she's like leaving the library, and there's just like the moment where she's standing by the building and she's like feeling these emotions, but it's just like a tear running down her face.
Like her dialogue was just so, but it's not like that in the book. And again, we haven't seen the second and third season, so maybe they give her a lot more.
Yeah.
By the end of the season, the first season, she has more like she's more of a person,
right?
But like who is written on the pages is not.
It's not who
who is being portrayed in the book or in the show.
Which is hard because I feel like sometimes, does that speak more to who is directing or screenwriting?
I don't know. I mean, they probably wanted her to be a little less because they don't lean into her family story is a big part of it in the show, but in the book, it is everything.
Yeah.
She's a bishop from the Bishop Witches.
Yeah.
Her parents were like these incredible people. Matthew knew of her mother, didn't know her dad, but like knew of her mother.
Yeah.
And there's like moments where you kind of get to see a little bit of the background of her family, like the pictures and stuff, but they kind of really gloss over it.
Yeah.
And there's also that scene where in the book where she's thrown down that big hole where, that evil bitch witch.
Yeah. Which also
one of the best scenes in the book.
But she's such a smaller character in the book. I think
Satu?
Yeah. In the show, she's way more.
She's
present.
from the first episode on.
Yeah.
Like you have that weird scene where they're by the cabin with Knox.
Here's a question though.
Fuck?
There's like a part of me that feels bad for her.
For Satu?
Yeah.
She so badly wanted to be in the congregation.
Yeah.
That she was willing to do anything.
And like I think Knox takes advantage of her like desire.
Agreed.
And like
100%.
I don't know what her backstory is. They don't really get into that too much. But like I wonder, like clearly she doesn't really have family. So this is like kind of how she's creating her own family. Yeah. And in the show, there are like moments when she's doing all the horrible things to Diana that you're kind of like, wait, like she doesn't want to be doing this, but like she knows she needs to if she wants to be in the congregation.
She like disassociate, like you can watch her disassociate in the moments. It's just like, I have to do this, remove your emotion.
Yeah. And I think she even says to Knox, like, I'm not going to do that to her. Like, I'm not going to do that. And it's very much like, well, then.
Yeah, you have empathy for her, just like the character Juliet.
Yeah.
Who was created to fall in love with Matthew and crave Matthew and want Matthew. And she wants him so bad and he just wants nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
So much so that she's finding boys named Matthew in the street to just.
Also, her like maker that whole dynamic in the show is just
so creepy.
Like, talk about being groomed.
Yeah, 100%.
Like the
100%.
whole, like I was like, what is happening right now? I don't understand.
He throws her in the cell, and he's like, she's like, you told me to crave Matthew. Like this poor girl was created by this man.
And then like a scene or two later, he's like bathing her.
God, it's so gross.
Oh, that's a lot. We don't like that.
The guy's name was Hamish. We were close. The friend's name is Hamish, who's a demon.
And he's kind of, I love him.
I love him. His name is not Hamish or Hyman.
Nope.
So cross those off the list.
Got it.
I will say I love who they cast as her Aunt Sarah. It's Alex Kingston, and I love her.
Agreed.
Every time I've seen her in something, she looks like a witch. She looks like a witch.
You know what?
I love her.
Everything about her? She just
the hair, her clothes, her style, her voice, and also in the book, Aunt Sarah's a don't mess with me kind of witch. Alex Kingston is exactly that.
Yeah.
They nailed that casting.
Yeah. I just realized something that we haven't brought up yet, but it kind of goes back to when we were talking about the congregation. And I realized one of the major plots of the show is the fact that vampires, witches, and demons cannot be in relationships.
They cannot intermingle. Yeah.
And that is a huge part of the plot for the show, is the fact that Diana and Matthew becoming involved together romantically is like super bad for everyone involved.
For the whole universe of all creatures.
And so it definitely has like I don't know, the vibe is just kind of, I don't know, I liked it.
Me too.
I like
the like taboo, the like you're going against but that's what I'm saying, because in the book their love is so intense that they don't care. Where in the show they go from meeting each other to she's just going to France.
Yeah.
Like there's the scene where they're in the car and they're driving to his home and I'm like, you've known this man for 3 days.
Yeah, exactly.
He stalked you while you were rowing.
Yeah.
You had to walk past him because your sweatshirt made him want to eat you.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go to France.
And they kiss once. I'm sorry. They kiss twice. And then they hold hands when they're leaving.
I do like
Oxford.
That scene, though. That's like, I really like that scene where they're walking through the cobblestone streets of Oxford and there's like that big arch and they're walking and he reaches his hands out and she grabs it. And I'm like, oh.
Also, can we talk about the suitcase she carries? Because it's adorable.
Oh my God. It's like a trunk.
Yeah.
It is real cute.
It was really cute. I like that detail.
I thought that too. I was looking at he's got like an actual duffel bag and she's got this little trunk. I was like, how romantic.
So cute.
I love it.
Because my first thought was like, she only brought a tote bag. Like, that's enough clothing. They're going away. They don't even know how long they're going. And then I saw her little suitcase and I was like, oh.
And in the book, he says like, that's all you want. And she's got one bag. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, I'm used to traveling with Miriam, his assistant, who's got like 5 suitcases for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then you see Miriam and she's like a super hot, very knowledgeable, who I 100% thought that maybe her and Matthew had a thing.
Yeah.
But it's like her and Marcus might have a thing.
Yeah.
That there's something there.
And also that character's very different in the show, which is a little bit disappointing.
I agree.
Like she's way less involved in Matthew's life. But again, maybe that's on purpose to kind of allow Diana to have more of a I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of conjecture here because we did not read the rest of the books and we have not watched the rest of the show.
Yeah.
But there are definite things. One of the scenes I brought up, her riding a horse is a very big deal in the books because she's found all these outlets to channel the adrenaline that having her magic building up inside her. She hasn't realized why, but she always needs to run. She needs to row. She needs to ride horses. And so there's this moment where she's able to communicate kind of to the horses and like talk to them. And Matthew's like, oh my God, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. So she has this horse. She goes out riding the first day. And then the second time they're going to go riding, he like presents her with this like essentially like a bubble for her to go riding. And she's got a helmet. She's got this vest that's like weighted and protected. Yeah. But then he buys her riding boots and she says how she's never had real riding boots before. And there's this scene where he like puts them on for her. and it's super romantic and hot. Doesn't exist.
It's the little moments though. It's the hand clench, it's the brush of the hand to the hand.
The hand holding, and the whole yoga.
Yeah.
The way that he like gets her to trust him in the book is he invites her to this yoga class because he does yoga to clear his mind because he's got, a few centuries in his brain there that he has to get work through.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes with him, and it's a yoga class taught by a human, but full of creatures, vampires and witches and demons. And it's in that moment that she starts to realize, oh, you can be friends with demons and vampires. And his best friend is a demon, Hamish. And you don't get any of that. I don't know, they kind of really skipped ahead in the show. I wish they had allowed that build up. Like, things that were happening in episode 1 didn't happen until halfway through the book. And this is a big book. How many pages is that thing?
It is.
Tiny print, by the way.
It is very tiny print.
You know how usually we're like, it's an easy read.
Yeah.
It's a fast read. This is not a fast read.
It's 579 pages.
Yeah. She's a girthy one.
It's hefty. It's hefty.
She's girthy. And also she doesn't, Deborah Harkness, I don't think, she's not a screenwriter.
No.
So I don't think that she's like I don't know if she was as involved in the making of the show.
Fair.
They did stay pretty close to the storyline. They changed some things, but just the couple at the end that she's got the white queen piece that she has to present to her. You don't even know about that until the last 100 pages of the book.
Yeah.
We're in the show.
It's like the second episode. Yeah.
It's so weird.
And there's a lot more connection, right? So like the parent of the girl's baby dad is in the congregation.
Exactly.
And there's like a lot more tying things together. And like, I have to just thinking of the horses. I just think back to the scene where when Matthew is off trying to figure out like who broke into the lab. There's the scene where the mom is like, I'm going to take you hunting.
Oh my God. That is giving Skin of the Killer Bella in the worst way. And it's like zooming around her. And I'm like,
there's the
what?
fox.
The random fox.
The fox is like moving his shoulders. And then you just see like the camera's like panning around. And then you just see the mother. And then she just shoots across. And then it doesn't pan again. And then it pans again. And it's just the mom sitting. She's just chewing on the... And I'm like, wait, I'm very confused. I thought they just drank blood. I didn't realize that they ate the
stands
animal.
up and she's like, this is what will happen if you love Matthew. And it's like,
you're just going to eat a fox?
Oh, okay, Edward.
It's just such a weird... And she's like...
so corny and gross.
And then Diana's like, if you thought this would make me not love him, well, you're wrong. And she just walks away.
Which,
and it's
in
like...
the book, they have a scene where she takes her hunting and shows her this is what it's like. You need to know everything. Blah, blah, blah.
So different.
In the show, I'm watching it and I'm like, what? I'm embarrassed. At that moment, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to be part of the show, and I'm not even part of the show. And I was very embarrassed.
I was embarrassed too. I think because the whole she's just standing there, she's holding onto the meat, and she's like, "This is what we are," and you're just like,
and zooming in a circle. What the fuck?
Also, like, you rode horses out into the middle of the woods. You tie them up, and then there's like this moment of like she doesn't know where the mom is, and then there's the fox.
I can't. I'm like my face is getting red because I'm getting embarrassed again. It was so corny.
And then it just goes back. They're just back at the house. You're just like, all right. And then obviously Matthew comes back, right? And there's like the scene of Diana's like she's like taking a bath, I think.
Yeah.
And they're like, he's coming. And she's like, oh. And she like starts running out the door and he's running up the side. And it's just this moment of like, it should be like a sweet moment, but instead it's just like, he just says to her like, are we going to do this? Because if we do this, there's no turning back. And she's just kind of like, tell me, Matthew. And he's like, but if we do, she's like, say it. You have to say it. And then he's like, I love you, Diana. And she's like, I love you, Matthew. And they kiss. And then it's like,
they're married. Surprise. In the book, he like calls her and tells her like, I love you. And she's like, half asleep and she's like super excited about it. But there's also this really cute moment where she's so excited that he's coming home that she's like tapping her foot, pacing around, can't wait for it. And she runs outside and she's like, say it again, say it to my face. And he says, I love you. And like, that's cute.
Yeah, there's built up. It's not just this weird, like, he's coming and then boop, 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 and then, okay.
Just a whole bunch of weird shit.
And I don't know. Like, I don't want to, because to be fair, like, I'm watching it without any, like, I will continue to watch the series because I want to. But like, is it the actors? Is that what is throwing us off?
I think it might be a combo of everything. I think it might be that the zooming mother, I don't know. There's a lot going on there. There's a whole lot going on there. And I mean, I'm just going to say, because I know we're wrapping it up.
Yeah.
This is a definite watch it for sure. But like, to me, read it. If you're not going to watch a show, you're not missing out on a fucking thing watching the show.
No.
But this is a read it for me. 100%.
Agreed. And also, I would say this is like the perfect book to read in October.
Oh my God. It's perfection.
It has such good descriptions of buildings, like crackling fires and like when they're doing like witchy it's perfect when you're like in that mood of like wanting to read a good
spooky fall. And also the writing is fantastic.
It is.
And if you are a history nerd, the way that she plugs and pulls actual historical events to tie in to make it believable, because the idea is essentially these creatures are living amongst the humans in modern time.
Right.
So talking about how these creatures were part of our history, the world history, it's so good. Artfully and perfectly done. But I don't think you're missing anything if you don't watch it. I'm going to watch it because I enjoy shit TV, but
fair. I wouldn't judge it so harshly.
Because you watched it before you read it. That's why.
It broke me a little bit. But here's the other thing is, for anyone that does read the book and feels like, I don't know, like it's good, but like, I don't know. I've heard, again, I haven't read the other books, but I've heard the next book in the trilogy is like, you're just blown away.
Oh, well, I'm going to start it right away on my drive home today.
It's like that whole like first book is meh, and then you get to the second, third, and fourth, and you're like, why did I not read all of these way sooner?
That's what I'm doing.
So like, of course.
All right. I will report back then.
Yeah. Well, we could always do another episode if we find it like, whoa, it changed our lives.
All right. I'm in.
I'm in too. So on this one.
But for you? Are you a bother?
I'm a bother.
Okay.
I'm a bother. Yeah.
I understand.
I like it. It's a good one. So until next time.
I'm happy we did it though.
Yeah, me too. I really liked it.
It was a good way to close out our month of witches, considering our last episode had nothing to do with witches.
And it was definitely, there's a different level there.
100%.
It's more for like 6-year-olds, whereas this is not for 6-year-olds.
Probably not.
No, I wouldn't read this to your kid.
Definitely not. So we'll see you. Wait, this is the end of our season of The Witch, so we're taking a little break.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is the end of our
season.
This
is it.
Yeah. And we'll be back.
We will be back with some really fun holiday things that we are excited.
We're so
to be
excited.
Covered. Like super excited about that. But we're going to be throwing up other content too on our Patreon.
We'll be gone, but not really.
We're not really going to be gone.
Yeah.
Because we want to hang out. So we're going to be hanging out. And we'll just make sure we record stuff when we do.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet. Until then, guys.
Bye. Our editor is Katie Yonner. Our associate producer is Grace Heerman. Our production coordinator is Nicole Vargas. And our senior content producer is Kyle Bosch. Our executive producer is Tommy West. And Watch It or Read It is produced by Gotham West Studios.
Watch It or Read It Season 3 is almost here. We're back with brand new episodes coming out every Tuesday beginning November 26th. We're starting the season with your favorite holiday stories, Little Women, The Chronicles of Narnia, and more. Join us as we dive deep into more classic books and their screen adaptations, helping you decide, watch it or read it. See you on November 26th.